All right, so I think we're good. I think we're ready to get going this afternoon. Thank you to everyone for being here. As I just said, especially to the East Coasters in the middle of quite a blizzard. Our leader today included. We can ask you just to remember to please mute your microphones. We are recording this for the folks that are not able to join us live, and many will watch this recorded session after. On behalf of the Jesuit Schools Network, welcome to our latest virtual inquiry session. As you know, the JSN seeks to be a supportive resource to our member schools, and this virtual session is designed to be just that, a carved out space to listen, to learn, and to engage. We are eager to encourage a spirit of inquiry across the many layers of our work in Jesuit education. We envision our particular brand of educational inquiry to be the art of inquiry as seen through our Ignatian lens, asking questions and exploring issues that matter in our schools through the frame of our shared Jesuit mission. I am Kristen Ross Cully, and I serve as Director of Educational Inquiry with the JSN's Conference Office, and I'd like to thank my colleague, Kristen Smith, who leads all things communications for us, who is here on the call as well, who will help us ensure a smooth Zoom this afternoon. If we might take a moment to begin, as we always do, with a prayer this afternoon. And as we quiet ourselves, let's be reminded that in being together this afternoon, virtually across the network, across every time zone, we are together in the presence of God. In the name of the Father and Son and Holy Spirit. May the God who created a world of diversity and vibrancy go with us as we embrace life in all its fullness. May the Son who teaches us to care for strangers go with us as we try to be good neighbors in our communities. May the Spirit who breaks down our barriers and celebrates community go with us as we find the courage to create a place of welcome for all. In these days of challenge in our world, we pray especially for the grace of inclusion, of hope, of love, of coming together, and for our desire to be welcoming communities. St. Ignatius Loyola, pray for us. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Again, I welcome you formally to our latest virtual inquiry session entitled After George Floyd, exploring a research study that examines perspectives from Black faculty on hiring policies in Jesuit schools. In this inquiry session, we will explore the recent doctoral research of Dr. Jacques Joseph, Dean of Students at Loyola School in New York City. His study explores the lived experiences of Black faculty members within Jesuit schools, as well as their perception on school leadership to hire for diversity. This study is anchored in the post-Floyd era and how Jesuit school leadership embraced and adapted to this era, with a particular emphasis on examining barriers to diversifying faculty in Jesuit institutions. It's my great pleasure to formally introduce our keynote speaker, our friend and colleague, Dr. Jacques Joseph. Dr. Joseph has worked at Loyola School in New York City for 19 years, 14 as a chemistry teacher, and 4 as Dean of Students. In 2019, Jacques founded the INES program at Loyola School. INES stands for the Institute for Nurture, Enrichment, and Self-Empowerment. It's a free educational and leadership enrichment program that prepares middle school aged girls to succeed in top Catholic and independent high schools in New York City. Students who participate in INES are devoted to making substantial gains in learning, leadership, and service to others. In alignment with the Ignatian spirit of Cura Personalis, INES strives to enroll highly motivated and deeply committed girls from predominantly underserved backgrounds. Dr. Joseph holds a Master's of Science in Educational Leadership and recently completed his doctoral studies in educational policies at Fordham University. And we are eager to explore and to learn from him this afternoon. So I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you, everyone, for being here on a very snowy day. Thank you for people on the east side. I salute you, salute your resilience to be here. And a little shout out to my aunt who's here. So, Nana, thank you for being here. Okay, so let's start with the presentation right away. So let me share. Can everyone see?
Mhm.
Wonderful. Okay, so if I go back to the summer of 2020, I was, watching, the protests after of George Floyd. My daughter next to me, being kind of frightened by what was going on, and I just realized that, the world would not be the same after that. Uh, and I think the reason is that because we were pretty much forced to see that, right? We were all at home, right? We were all, it's like we had no choice to see what's happening, in contrast with other racial incidents. It seems like this one stroke something special in our common consciousness, right? And it has to do with the fact that, it was during COVID times uh, there was a response, for a lot of people based on those protests. But what was really interesting is that what was happening into our schools, right? And what was happening into our schools are our alums were having accounts, especially on social media, of their lived experience in Catholic and independent school and the challenges that they had to go through that. And it was, you know, kind of a revelation, but also it was, if not surprising, it was, yes, a revelation. And then I think a lot of the schools, Catholic schools, independent schools, Jesuit schools, right? Um, realized that something needed to be done, right? That, we can be proud in the mission that we're doing, in the work that we're doing as Jesuit schools, but, there's still some aspect of it that needs um, to be worked on and need to be improved, right? And what better way to do this, aligning ourselves with, the principle of Ignatian leadership and making sure that, all students, especially Black students in that particular example, be seen and, and have a better live experience, right? So, you know, uh, I listened to all the inquiry session before this one, all right? And Dr. Wood in one of his sessions said that, Jesuit school were very bold in their statement, right? So in the response. So the response, the statements were really bold, which make me very proud to be a part of that. And what was interesting to me is that, well, if we're going to make those bold statements, are we going to follow through, right? And that's really the purpose of my study, right? The purpose of my studies was to look at what efforts, what happened after those statements, right? And which perspective that was interesting to look at was the perspective of Black teachers currently working in Jesuit school, right? So I wanted to look at their live experience to compare them to previous studies on live experience on Black teachers, right? I wanted to look at what they think about the school efforts to hire for diversity, bringing more Black teachers into their institution. Was there any factors or barriers? I think it was more interesting for me to look at the barriers that schools were encountering to diversify their faculty, and also how they were adapting after a post-Floyd environment. Now, I want to be, transparent that I started that study in 2023, and by the time 2024, the world had changed already. But I will talk about that a bit later. But my really purpose was to look at that, in response to George Floyd. right? Um, so for me, I think it was really a will to bring findings to the Jesuit School Network. I guess I'm in the right place now. So I want to thank again, Kristen, for helping me doing that. But it was really to look at, what the findings will be and how I can share that to school leaders in Jesuit school and also the Jesuit School Network and see how we can be furthering the cause and furthering our mission and, making sure we have a more diversified faculty that is more representative of our society. So also what was interesting for me is that, as I was reading, there was a lot of studies in Black teachers' experience in schools, but they were mostly male, right? And there were bare to no study on Black female live experience. So I wanted to make sure that, the Black female voice was something that I needed to highlight in my studies. So just to talk about the review of literature that I did before to help me frame my study. Um, I think the most, of course, I look at policies based on the eye for hiring. I look at previous Black teacher experience in high school when I realized that, it's mostly male Black teachers. I wanted to add a female voice into that. I look at racial justice and the Catholic Church history. But what was really interesting for me was the Jesuit context, right? And the Jesuit context, there are really two studies that really helped me frame what I wanted to do with my studies. It's, of course, Jane Blaisdell, really, really important work on the importance that we need to move from tolerance to inclusion in Jesuit school, and also the work of Sajid Kabadi in from Regis Jesuit in Colorado. Um, and those two studies really helped me frame what I wanted to do. And I kind of I kind of pride myself in saying that, my studies is kind of a continuation of the work that they've done. I was listening also to the previous inquiry session with Dr. McCann, in which he was talking about the importance of Dr. Blaisdell's work, and that's the work that started all the type of studies that we're doing right now. So I'm very grateful for both of them, to both of them. Um, so based on that, I was able to frame my studies, and there's really three things that were important for me in terms of framework. The first one was um, the four pillars of Jesuit leadership from Chris Lowney's book. Right, there's four: heroism, love, ingenuity. Um, the fourth one passed me by. But I think what was important for me was the pillar of ingenuity, because ingenuity, based on Chris Lonnie's book, was um, the fact that Jesuit leaders need to be able to innovate and adapt themselves as the world is changing. And George Floyd changed that, right? The world changed after George Floyd. So it was important to see how Jesuit school will also adapt to that, right? So, and the field theory, that's another one. It talks about when you want to bring change to an organization, there's returning forces. So when I was talking about barriers to diversify, that's the framework of the field theory. And the very important one also is the social justice framework for that Sajid Kabadi put together in his own study. And that study is really interesting because it's based on Pedro Arrupe, three seminal letters that he wrote around in the 1970s, 72, 70, 73, which is around Congress 32 of the congregation, right? And those three, Sajid Kabadi was about to take those three letters and talk about the need to be prophetic, when we need to work against injustice. So that was really important to the fact that I actually asked him if I could reframe his own, as you can see here, his own social justice framework and kind of frame it as a racial justice. As I was talking about, my issue was more about racial justice. Fun fact, Pedro Arrupe, which was a man ahead, of his time, also wrote Interracial Apostolate in 1967 after meeting with the civil rights leaders. So I think putting all those things together, I was able to, with the permission of Dr. Kabadi, to have a framework that worked for my studies. I'm not going to spend too much time on methodology because that's the part that's usually not interesting. However, I want to talk about the fact that I decided to have semi-structured interviews with 10 Black teachers. Okay, what were six males and four females. So I was able to get a pretty good number of a pretty good percentage of Black female leaders. So, and it's going to show also in my findings that, their voice was really, really, really important. And based on that, I was able, from the interviews, I was able to triangulate the data from the interviews with the statement from all the schools after George Floyd, the demographic from faculty that I got from the Cara Institute, and another inquiry session shout out here, and being able to to find findings. What was interesting is I use Atlas as a tool to to code and put my coding together. And I had fun and I asked AI to do it for me, and it made no sense. So I just want to say that there is still, research is still place for a human element to do the work here. So those are the three themes that came up of my triangulation of data. So let's just dive right into the the findings. The first one, we talk about the lived experience within schools. What was interesting, first of all, is that all Black teachers talk about an overall positive experience, right? Um, it it's a bit different from previous studies on that. Usually, there's a certain source of negativity in lived experience of Black teachers in schools, but doesn't seem to be in Jesuit schools. So, is it hooray for us? Um, or is more needs to be look into it, right? Is it our shared mission that helps Black teachers feel welcome and being part of a community? So that's a question that could be answered in further studies. In most studies about Black teachers' live experience, there's always group in two categories. You have the groupers, you have the loners. So the groupers are Black teachers who are in schools with other Black teachers. And then you have the loners, who are Black teachers who are in their institution on their own, right? So I kept the same terminology in my studies. And my finding is that l- teachers who are loners or on their own in their institution feel lonely but don't feel isolated, which is different from previous studies. Previous studies clearly speaks about a feeling of isolation, which is not happening in our schools, right? And but they feel lonely, right? So there's a loneliness aspect. One of the um, participants talked about the fact that he's proud of being the only teacher in Black teacher in their schools, but he would love to have more teachers with him, right? Um, Groupers talk about the sense of community and support from other Black colleagues, right? Um, and of course, both categories, advocated for more Black colleagues. So that did not change, and that aligns very well with previous studies. Oh, uh, okay, Stan. So first, shout out to Black female participants here. Um, They spoke about an added element of pressure and burden to their lived experience, which was quite different from their male experience, right? So that's going to be my first mention of we need to study Black women more in Jesuit institutions. So that's an absolute must. We need to do more of that. right? Um, and also they spoke about the fact that they're often perceived as being racial experts in their field or in their spaces, right? So they feel like, if there is a racial incident, they immediately go to them to ask for, what do we need to do? Can you help us with that? So and that fact add that pressure and burden to their lived experience. Um, Also, most participants describe their role, the fact that they need to be there for the Black students. Usually, loners will stay longer than groupers in institution, and that's also pretty prevalent in Jesuit school because I need to stay there because the Black students need me, right? They need to see that, they need to see themselves into their teachers, right? In terms of representation. So that was pretty much the same um, for this study. The fact that, they need to be there for Black students, but they also said that they need to be there for the white students, which was not only surprising, but mismatch with previous studies about uh, mismatched teaching. Most of the previous study that happened in 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 schools in particular are the effect of white teachers and Black students, right? So I have not encountered any about Black teachers into white students. So further study would be needed there also. But that was really, really interesting, and it came in the findings like quite convincingly. So when we talk about live experience within schools, so recommendations, I would say, I think it's just important to be intentional, and intentional will be the word of the day here in my presentation. All right. So intention, we need to be intentional in not only creating a support system for Black teachers so that their sense of belonging, especially for the loners, right, who has that feel of loneliness, right? And if those support systems already exist, to make sure that we highlight them more, I wouldn't say efficiently, but make sure that we highlight them more so that Black teachers are aware of them. So I think intentional is the right word here. And I know also that those initiatives are saying exist either from the network or in different Jesuit provinces, but either they need to happen more frequently or they need to be highlighted to make sure that Black teachers are aware of them. The second theme that talk about here is the barriers to hiring Black teachers. So what we're going to see here is we're going to see barriers coming from either leadership or different stakeholders, but also coming from teachers themselves. So that was really interesting. So let's dive into this a bit more. Um, the first barrier that came out is just the lack of racial awareness from leadership. The reality is that most of the leadership in our network, in our schools, is white and male, right? And Black teachers, especially female Black teachers, shout out once more, feel like, the lack of awareness is not intentional, right? The leaders are not intentionally being dismissive, right? But it's just an extension of their own lived experience as white and male leaders, right? So, so that's the first barrier. And yes, it aligns with previous literature, but what was interesting here from the female participant is them being um, making sure to let us know that they don't think that lack of awareness is on purpose. It's just based on the lived experience and the way it is, right? Um, the second finding was, or the second barriers, I would say, uh, talk about the tension in schools trying to diversify, trying to hire more teachers of color, and in our case, Black teachers, right? A tension between trying to do that and also to maintain an elite image, right? So we need to pause here and ask ourselves what elite means, right? And what historically and traditionally the term elite means in our institution, right? So um, does it mean does it mean white, right? So that's really what we need to ask ourselves, right? So when and because those that tensions comes from not from the school leaders, it comes from the different stakeholders. It comes from parents, come from alums, come from board members, but not specifically the school leaders. When those stakeholders are saying, but historically that's not the way it is. Oh, but traditionally it's not the way. What does it mean, right? Is it historically white? Is it traditionally white, right? So, and that tension is really a manifestation of that dialectic or a tension between the Jesuit mission and the Jesuit brand, right? Dr. Kabadi talked about the fact that Jesuit school over the years, has created a brand, right? But a brand for a population or for a community that is white and male, right? And but that went away from the original mission of the Jesuit school, which means to teach the underserved, right? And that kind of balance that they trained to do was in in Kabadi's studies was lead to the creation of Cristo Rey schools, right? But you can see also here that that tension still exists, right? That we need to keep the brand, we need to keep the elite brand up, but also we need to diversify, right? But in the perception is that it cannot happen together, right? So that's and that was one interesting barriers. So shout out to Dr. Kabadi for that. It seems like this findings is a direct response to his study. Now, if we look from the other side, what was interesting is that, and I think that's one of the most, and I think for me was the most important barriers, is that Black applicants are unwilling to apply to Jesuit schools, right? So there's a reluctance to apply for position. Um, and there's a few things. First of all, the fact that they're Jesuit Catholic school and the low number of Black Catholics, the lack of exposure of African Americans to Catholic education, right? And or just the fear of entering a predominantly white environment. So, and it kind of shows in just if you look at the data from just looking at the numbers of teachers that I had 10 teachers, right? Six of them were male. Out of those six male teachers, four of them were graduate from Jesuit schools. And from those four, three of them were teaching in their alma mater. So the question is, are ourselves as Jesuit institution only hiring Black teachers that we are familiar with, right? Or do we need to widen the network and looking beyond that, right? So once again, based on that, is there also an association between the term elite and whiteness, which really need a further research into that? So based on that, I mean, what can we do, right, to help with those barriers? Well, the first thing is that we can go back to the previous inquiry session and listen to Dr. Katie McCann's work on inclusive leadership or supportive leadership, and make sure that we form school leaders, right? The school leaders that we currently have, and help them create an environment where Black teachers can thrive, and also those school leaders can increase their racial awareness, right? So go listen to that. It's a great session from Katie, who's a great person, a great friend that I know. Um, More Black leaders are needed also, right? I think that's the reality of that. Um, I would say, school leaders, if you're listening to that, to me right now, I would say, you know, send your Black teachers to the leadership seminars. All right. Um, be intentional into that. Intentional, the word again, right? Um, be intentional and do that. Okay. Dr. Kabadi also had a study a few years ago, like a couple of years ago, where its suggestion is to widen the network outside the Jesuit network to recruit Black candidates. So that would be a suggestion, just based on the findings of the reluctance of applying to Jesuit school, and also to the fact that 40% of my participants were alums of Jesuit school, and 30% were alum of that particular school. Um, but I also understand that, we as Jesuit institution, we like to hire teachers who are well versed in what we call the Jesuit language, right? This is why also the importance of a good Ignatian formation program is essential for our schools, especially for our teachers of color, right? And all those recommendations are short to medium term solution, but at the end of the day, if we want more Black leaders, more Black teachers, and we want to hire them as alums, then just make sure we have more Black students in our schools, which is an entirely different subject. But long term, we get more students, we get more alums, we get more future leaders. The last theme is talking about ingenuity and the concept of justice post-Floyd, right? Um, the findings here is that participants were very happy with the positive effect of DEI rules and offices and all the DEI initiative in their institution and how they use those offices and roles to help with the hiring practices and how to help to promote inclusivity and also how to look at the hiring practices and make sure that we can be able to attract Black teachers. Right? Um, they also spoke about the fact that they felt that most of those initiatives were just a reaction of a traumatic event. Again, they're saying once more, we had to go through something very traumatic for those changes to happen, and really wish for the future that those initiatives are more proactive planning, right? That we don't always need someone to die to look at what we need to do to increase diversity in our schools. They also spoke also about the fear of what's happening right now. The fact that DEI has been challenged, in different branches of government, all the way to national government, right? And how we need to adapt to that, right? Which is the ingenuity I'm talking about, the framework of ingenuity and how to adapt to a changing world, right? And they are a bit worried about, the state of that anti-DEI wave and how we're going to sustain our efforts to bring more Black teachers in our institution. Intentional is once again will appear. Um, all participants, mostly all participants, share that we need to be intentional when we recruit Black teachers. Oh, we're back. Okay, wonderful. Sorry about that. Um, Intentional. So they spoke about we need to be extremely intentional in recruiting Black teachers, right? Now it aligns with previous studies of, we need to be more aggressive to, in our recruiting. Um, Not only we need to be intentional, which is also a suggestion for Kabadi's study, but they want to be involved. Most of the teachers said, ask me. I'm going to help. I'm going to be part of the hiring committee. I'm going to go and I'm going to advertise for you guys. They want us to be intentional and they want to be part of the process, right? So that was probably the, if not one of the most, if not the most important finding from my study. What was interesting in terms of our Jesuit charism is that when we talk about racial justice, they don't feel that hiring for diversity is a racial justice issue is just part of the Jesuit principle. But it's our Jesuit principles to be racial justice is a part of our Jesuit principle, but they could not make that connection. And I think if I would continue studying, and I would love to do that, but if I would continue to do research, I would love to look into what are Black teachers' perspective of the different Jesuit charism, right? Um, in terms of, how they perceive that. Because it was really interesting to me when they were saying that, yeah, I mean, it's part of the Jesuit principles, but I don't see it as racial justice. Either we know that our Jesuit principle and racial justice go just like that, right? More study needed for that. Recommendation, amplify DI roles, right? Everything about DI needs to be amplified. If it doesn't exist, needs to be created in our schools, right? Um, I know there are gatherings from the network or from the provinces into DI practitioners. But once again, I would say being more intentional in making sure that they exist, right? And highlight those gatherings, right? Um, Also, yes, involve your Black employees into the hiring process. They want to be part of that, right? They want to be, and I think it just shows how, they want to be part of the community, and and how the importance of their sense of belonging. That they're like, yes, ask me to do anything to help get more Black teachers into the schools. Um, Target. One of the ways we were thinking about targeting Black candidates and widen the network is, look at local universities and try to strengthen the relationship with the student teaching programs. Uh, but I think the most important thing is how we will stand up as Jesuit institution with the anti-DI wave, right? And those challenges is how it will affect us and how we will adapt once again using Jesuit ingenuity, and how we will look at that and continue our efforts. There's two currents, right? There's what I call the fight or adapt, right? Some institutions have said DI is part of our mission, right? This is what we do. This is what we do. It's our mission, it's our principle. We're going to keep doing that, right? And other institutions have adapted, uh, making the same, I mean, still doing what they're doing, but adapting the terms, right? We talk about inclusive excellence. We talk about Father Devron's article in America Media, that Dr. McKen also spoke in her inquiry session, about how reframe the term DI into our Jesuit mission also is a way to do so. But I think what's important for us is not only to keep doing so, right? But we need to see, how this wave on anti-DI challenges, we need to continue our efforts. But there's a need to face those challenges, and that's the next question. It seems like Jesuit education is always at a crossroad, right? Not paraphrasing the title of the book, Jesuit School at Crossroad, but that's another one, right? It's like, how are we going to continue this road with this stumbling block in front of us? And those are my findings. So now, I mean, when I'm looking at this, I think there's really a few future research suggestions that I would like to suggest to you all, right? We need to keep studying Cristo Rey schools because they are an important part of our mission, and want to make sure that, they feel that they're part of our mission, that they're part of our Jesuit global and national Jesuit community. More studies on women in Jesuit school is needed also. Dr. Tumes Teves' work was great. And what was interesting in her study is that she was saying that female leaders feel like, they need to learn Jesuit language as they get hired, which means they often don't have access to Jesuit education before, right? So and I think it's even more salient for Black women. So more studies on Black women in Jesuit school would be needed. And also, I would say, as I was saying, study Black teachers and their view of Jesuit charism is also extremely important to see, to look into their sense of belonging. Right? If there are four main takeaways from this. So, you know, if you're listening this as a recording, you can pass all the stuff and go all the way to here, right? The main takeaway for me from my studies is that we need to create more spaces for Black teachers, right? We need to be intentional in recruiting Black candidates, right? And we need to study more Black women and in Jesuit schools, and also how are we going to face this wave of anti-DI challenges and how we're going to do it together. I would like to end with this. I've used the word intentional pretty often, right? And I think the challenge right now or the debate is that is intentional means discrimination, right? So the anti-DEI laws will look at intentional being discrimination and will challenge on that. And I would invite all of us to think about when we when others are talking about intentional and being discriminatory. I just would invite people to look at Luke 3 to 7, the Good Shepherd who left the whole all the sheep to look for the lost sheep, to take care of the lost sheep, right? And it's the same thing here. It didn't The good shepherd did not discriminate the other, 7,500 of sheep to look for the lost sheep. It was just intentional in making sure that this lost sheep was cared as well as the other sheep who were walking with the good shepherd. So I invite everyone to think about that when they're questioning themselves about, intentional, is it discrimination or not? Thank you. And if there are any questions, uh, I'll be happy to answer.
Jacques, thank you so much. I'll kick off the Q&A. We do have some time, which we're grateful for. There's just
Mhm.
to so much to unpack, so many meaningful things that you've shared today, which we're grateful for. Just a kind of starter question. When you think back to sitting on that couch with your daughter during the pandemic, during the time of everything with George Floyd, what do you wish, all that you've learned, what do you wish you knew then that you have learned today?
It's a good question. That's a good question. What did I learn? I'm going to go back again to the word intentional. It seems as it's the word of the day. Um, I wish that as an educator or a school leader, I would have been more intentional in caring for Black students in my care, in my when I was a teacher. Um, Understanding that intentional doesn't mean that I'm discriminating against other students when I do that. So that's really yeah, I would say that.
Thank you. So we've got some time for folks who are joining us. Please just kind of chime in. We'll do our best to spotlight you here. But what feedback or insights, questions do you have for Jacques? Now is the time, and it'll make the conversation richer. So even more rich, I should say. So please go ahead and do it.
Hey, Jacques, it's nice to speak with you again.
Yeah, Fred, I'm sorry. I'll get back to you to your email. I promise.
No, 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 no. That's not why I'm
It's
here.
okay.
You think we got
But
Caitlin
thank you for
to
being here.
harangue you about an
Yeah,
email?
yeah. No, but thank you for being here.
Now, obviously, you had mentioned that the timeline of when you started this work to when you presented
Yeah.
your findings was a long runway. I'm
Yes.
wondering, in the interim of either when you were doing your work or since you've completed it now at this moment, if any school or group has kind of picked up any of your findings or any of the issues that you care about and started to move the ball down the court. Has there been progress since you started your research?
Well, I mean, it's I will I'll be frank, that's the first time I'm sharing my findings. So my hope is that yes, that people will and school leadership will look at this and um, some suggestions and like you said, get the ball rolling. But one thing that you said that was interesting is that the length of my studies, because as you know very well, you know, takes years to write a dissertation. And by the time I defended, um, when I was defending my dissertation, um, the teacher, I mean, Dr. Kotaro at Fordham said, "This is great, but it's already obsolete because we're already done with George Floyd, and now we're in the era of anti-DEI." And then he said that you could take that same study and do it again in the time of now, right? And it just shows about how the world changed quickly. And like I was saying earlier, like it seems like us as Jesuit institution, we're always at crossroad, but that's because the world is changing all the time, right? So once we think that we figured out something, then the world has changed again. Which is and which is why I think it's great that we have such great principles, Ignatian principle that aid us, that help us navigate those changes. But no, my hope is that I'll get some I'll get some either emails or calls. I think it'll be great.
Thank you.
And Frank, I promised Jacques that when he agreed to present today and to take the time to boil an enormous dissertation down into a 45-minute presentation, that it would be to spread this learning kind of across the network and that folks on the call will connect and invite him and this will just be the very beginning.
Hi, I have a question for you.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Paige Thomas. I'm the Director of Culture and Belonging at Brebeuf
Mhm.
Jesuit in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Nice.
So I serve as essentially the Chief Diversity Officer for our school. I was
Mhm.
curious more about if any of your research shared more about the impact of this role, and if it was just the mere existence of the role or certain strategies or where the role is structured. So, for example, a couple of years ago, this role reported to the principal. When I stepped into the role, it was reallocated to the president, and now I serve on the leadership team. So I was curious if there were any other additional findings around the existence of the role that made it more impactful or not.
So let me just go a bit more into the impact of DI offices into their perceptions of hiring policies. Um, they they found only positive things about the impact of those offices, and what they said is that oftentimes those offices, well, those offices, most of them were created after George Floyd. I mean, that's the perception. The perception that, it was, most of them were a reaction to George Floyd, although we know that some of those offices existed before. And I think for them, what would be beneficial, I think, for Black teachers is is they want to be part of the solution. They want to be part of of the mission. They want to be part of helping you in your office carry the mission. And so they often feel like, the office is doing great things, but they're not asking them for anything. So, like, for example, if you have, in the hiring processes, are you, first of all, are you part of the hiring process in as in your role? And also, that's number one. And also, could they be part of that? Can they take a look at the question being asked during the interviews? Can they look at the job description to make sure that, there's no bias in them. So that, which of course is also your role, but they just feel the main finding is that they want to be part of the process.
Thank you. That's super helpful. May I follow up with one more question?
Sure.
Was there anything based off of their tenure? So, for example, we went from no Black teachers to a couple this year, and so they're in their first year. Did that impact any of their perceptions or willingness to help or wanting to be involved? Or was
Mhm.
there any
Yeah.
differences that you found in sort of their tenure at a school and their desire
Yes.
to be involved?
So, although I didn't put too much emphasis in the how long they were at their own institution, but this is what was interesting. Most teachers who were loners, which means teachers who were there on their own, have been there for a long time. They've been there for a long time. And it makes sense because they're staying there because they say Black students need me, right? So, and that aligns with so many previous studies on, live experience of Black teachers in schools. So, and when you have groupers, I mean, teachers who have many colleagues who are also Black. Also, they don't stay as long, but their sense of belonging is a bit better in general. So I'm not sure I answered your question. If I did not, let me know. But I think for me, I didn't look into but I would say most of the teachers who felt the sense of loneliness of the loners are the ones who have been there for the longest time. Like one participant who was really adamant about, oh my God, I wish there was more Black teachers, and really, really adamant about that. I'd been in the institution for over 20 years.
I have a question.
Hello.
Um,
Hello.
Hi. So I heard you mentioning something about how in a lot of these institutions, prestige is often the same thing associated with whiteness. And that's one of the main reasons why a lot of Black teachers aren't hired. So I guess I wanted to ask you, like, how do we change that narrative from within? Because if the school and the administrators can be pressured or influenced or feel like they have to make certain decisions based on who's funding the school and the alumni. Um, how do we change that? And I had some thoughts that I wanted to share with you before you answered. I mean, the first thing would be starting from within. I mean, you're an example of that. We get more Black educators, in the system because that's how we start changing. Another thing would be the alumni. Something to look at is I feel like a lot of Black alumni do not participate. In a lot of the school events, they don't really donate. A lot of them feel like they don't have the access or the tools to give, or they don't feel like giving is for them. It is for white students. So I feel like bridging that gap is a good way to get them more involved because when more Black or POC alumni are involved, they also can become key stakeholders and their voices can also be heard as well. And if we want to amplify those voices, we have to make sure that they have the space to speak. So those were some of my thoughts because, yeah, when you brought that up, I thought that was very interesting.
No, Miss Bruder, it seems like you have already answered the question for me. But there's a few things in how to approach this. I think I know I use the word intentional a lot, but I think we have to do that again. But I think also we just have to be courageous, right? I think we have to be courageous in what we need to do. So one thing is looking at the perception of alien whiteness. I think, we have to be courageous and say we're going to diversify no matter what. So that's one thing. So that's one thing. After that, of course, we need to look a lot about how inclusive and supportive leadership is for our leaders, right? So that this, racial awareness is in place. And yes, we need more Black leaders in our school. So that's definitely something there. And now, how to get you were saying how to get Black alums to be part of the process. I think that's where the DI roles need to you know DI offices need to partner and collaborate with the advancement office, so that what is great about such roles as DEI is that you know they can be part of all initiative. They usually and answer to the president, but they can collaborate with the principal, they can collaborate with advancement, they can collaborate with finance and all that. So I think it's really trying to utilize those offices and make sure that we're able to target because there's a reason why they feel that they're not part. And of course studies could be look into that, but there's reason that those that they don't participate as much as other alum is either they never felt like they belong in their school, right? And which which is why I did that study, because it's based on that, right? And I think it's really trying to highlight the role of the DI office and make sure that they collaborate. Just make sure that DI is just not about affinity groups uh, um, and making sure that the students or have a live experience in their school that are good, but it's really also about making sure they collaborate with all the different offices in school, but also with those stakeholders, with the same stakeholders who are, uh, you know, uh, 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 bump into tradition and in the history, saying traditionally this is this and historically this is that. And I think those offices need to say that, well, historically, Jesuit schools have always existed uh, to educate all, but especially underserved. So we need to be able to do more of that.
Thank you.
Ariel, it's so great to see you. This is so exciting. I have to end it now because it will never get better than this for me. So this is so great. It's really wonderful to see you.
Good to see you too.
Um, So it is I will be the timekeeper here, and we're just over the hour. So I will conclude. There's so much that we could talk about. This could go on for hours, and I hope it does. We hope that this is just the beginning of the sharing of Dr. Joseph's really important and meaningful work for our network and his contribution to scholarship on Jesuit education. It's an exciting conversation in so many ways because there is so much work to be done. Saj Kabadi, Dr. Kabadi was joining us on the call for quite a while, and so that was terrific to know how this research study has built on his work, and it really makes me think what will come next. I admire Jacques for many reasons. One of them is that he really has, in embracing this research, he has modeled in all the ways we hope for. Lifelong learning and a commitment to curiosity, to inquiry, everything that we hope for our students. He's done it himself in undertaking this doctoral research while he's working full time in our schools. We got a glimpse of his dean of students email box there, and so this was not an easy lift for him. So we're grateful for it. His full research study is available in our practitioner research library, so we encourage you to take a look at that. To be in touch with Jacques or be in touch with me, I'll put you in touch with him if that's helpful, and we'll see what good can come from all of this learning that he's committed his life to these years. So thank you to Jacques for all the time you spent on this. Thank you to everyone for being a part of it. And we will record this and share it around. It'll take a couple of days, but we would ask for your help in kind of spreading that around as you will on all of our social media platforms. That's a terrific way to spread this beyond this group. So many thanks for being here this afternoon.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.